Today I'd like to talk about Robin Hood, the famous outlaw of England, steals from the rich to give to the poor, shoots a bow and arrow, has a band of merry men, uh, and he's one of the most adapted characters, I think, in literary and cinematic history. I know we've talked about this before with Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, but I'd have to imagine that, at least in the English speaking world, Robin Hood is probably in the top 10 of like adapted characters. Like stretching far back. We're not talking like Batman, Superman, comic book heroes or anything. But like Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, Robin Hood, King Arthur, uh, like characters that have a mythos, I think. Now, Robin Hood stretches back a lot further than Holmes and Dracula to medieval ballads, songs, lyrics. I don't know the specific ballads that he's referenced in, but I know his character developed over time into what it is now. I don't think from the start he was a outlaw in Sherwood Forest, but it's kind of how depictions of him evolved. And Robin Hood's not as old as King Arthur. King Arthur was, I believe, a Welsh mythological figure who fought back against the Anglo-Saxon invasion of England, or the Germanic invasion of England, in the late, no, early, mid 500s, the 6th century AD. And that's kind of where the whole King Arthur thing spawns from. And that whole universe took a step of its own into the Knights of the Round Table and the Holy Grail and all that. So Robin Hood, I don't think, has a mythology as deep as the Arthurian legend, but he's definitely a character that is awesome, and there's a lot to talk about here. So, why I bring this up? I just read The Adventures of Robin Hood by E. Charles Vivian. This is a 1927, I guess, retelling. It's basically just a novel about Robin Hood. Now, E. Charles Vivian, this was the first I'd heard of him, but it was the pseudonym of a guy named Charles Henry Cannell, who was an early to mid 20th century author who, from what I've seen on his wiki page, I'll link it below if you want to check him out, looks like he pumped out novels like No One's Business, supernatural fiction, fantasy fiction, detective fiction, Robin Hood, just a ton of novels. A British guy. And on Goodreads, this is his most famous or most rated book. So I think he wrote in other pseudonyms too, so maybe I wasn't finding all of his works on Goodreads. But he does a Robin Hood novel. And I mean, I guess it's a novel. It's more of like a series of vignettes. It's not disconnected short stories, but it's short chapters of the whole Robin Hood lore. But it's chronological in that events in later chapters are happen because of things that happened earlier. But this I enjoyed. It's always fun to read about medieval England. I love the Robin Hood character of the redistribution of wealth, fighting against corrupt officials, corrupt noblemen, greedy landlords, stealing from bad people. And in this book, there's not really an emphasis on like this folk hero who is the protector of the citizenry, and He's just giving money to everyone. This is Robin Hood for the reason of protecting a guy who was hungry, and he killed this beggar man killed a deer in the king's forest, and due to game laws in the 12th century, most of the forests were off limits. You couldn't kill the deer because that was the king's property. So he intercedes in this poor guy's killing of a deer, not a sacred deer, and they take back the deer to Robin Hood's house, Locksley Manor, Locksley Farm, and eventually Guy of Gisborne, one of the local landlords, is notified of the killing of the deer, and he comes to take out Robin Hood. And they beef, they fight. Robin kills a few people, and he has to flee into Sherwood Forest. So then he becomes the outlaw of legend. They live in the forest, they kill the king's deer, and they get into all sorts of antics with Robin assembling his band of merry men. You get the stories of Will Scarlet, Little John, Friar Tuck, Will and... No, not Will. Alan Adale. And he goes up against Guy of Gisborne, the Sheriff of Nottingham, and King John, or Prince John, I'm sorry. The King of England at this time is Richard the Lionheart, but Richard was constantly away. He was, in his 10-year reign, he was in England for maybe 6 months. And in his stead, John, Richard's brother, John Softsword, John Lackland, he's acting as regent, but he's the prince. And so he's another antagonist. Richard the Lionheart does have a cameo in here, and E. Charles Vivian hates John and loves Richard. He praises Richard. Every character, as soon as they see Richard, is like, wow, you're so handsome and cool and strong and handsome and a great king. And you definitely don't tax people, but John taxes people. And no, I'm not defending King John. Definitely one of the poorer kings of England. But the glazing for Richard was a little high in my estimation. But yeah, what were some interesting parts of this novel, like thematically? There's a big... One of the big themes is the Anglo-Saxon remnants of England versus the new Norman usurpers. They basically, when William the Conqueror took over England in 1066, he pushed a lot of Anglo-Saxons, like the English, out of their lands and their titles. So he put in a bunch of Normans into those positions. Normans were from the French mainland. And I found this a little confusing history-wise, because after you have William the Conqueror, the next king was William Rufus, his son. The next king was Henry I, another one of William the Conqueror's sons. Then you had this whole thing with Stephen and Matilda, which we'll not talk about that. But then the next king after that is Henry II, who is also known as Henry Curtmantle or Henry Plantagenet. And because of who his father was, he was a different dynasty than William the Conqueror, despite being blood related on the mother's side. But Henry's father was Geoffrey Plantagenet, Geoffrey of Anjou, which was a separate little province in France, the French area. So Henry wasn't Norman, technically. He was Angevin. And that's why the English dynasty from Henry to John, no, Henry to Henry, Henry II to Henry III is called the Angevin Empire, because they had territories in France and England, and they were all from the seed of Geoffrey Plantagenet. And so Richard the Lionheart and John were both sons of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. So these two kings, Richard and John, were not Norman. They were Angevin, and basically E. Charles Vivian calls them Norman. And I didn't think that was right. Like, technically the Angevins did conquer, like under Henry II, they conquered Normandy. So that became part of the Angevin Empire, but they were still Angevin. Now, I'm taking this, I don't even know why I brought that up, but I'm taking it as the word Norman here is just the word for, like, oh, you French dogs. Like, you're not English, you're not Anglo-Saxon, like, and you're taking my land and my money. But I don't think they should have been called Normans per se. Maybe some of the characters were Norman, but not Richard and John. But yeah, Adventures of Robin Hood, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it was a fun read, but there wasn't really any depth, and the story was just basically vignettes. Yeah, I want to pose the question of, do you have any recommendations of Robin Hood books or Robin Hood movies that I should watch? I have a big fascination with the character, and this is the first Robin Hood book I've read properly. And I know I've seen a few movies of Robin Hood. I don't think I've seen the full Errol Flynn 1938 movie. I know as a kid I watched the Robin Hood Russell Crowe movie, I think on TV. Barely remember it. I watched Men in Tights as a kid. Barely remember that. I know there's a Kevin Costner movie, haven't seen that. The Taron Egerton movie, haven't seen that, don't think I want to. And I know A24 is coming out with the Hugh Jackman Robin Hood movie. And I think I saw another trailer for another Robin Hood movie coming out soon that wasn't the Hugh Jackman. So yeah, are any of these books about Robin Hood that aren't this one worth reading? Howard Pyle does one. I don't know any others, but I would love to hear any recommendations. I won't go out and buy them immediately, but I have a good memory for books I'm recommended, so I'll have it in the brain whenever I'm shopping. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around for some Robin Hood content, and talk to you later.